The Penrose 512 was an unremarkable ship in the vast expanse of the outer solar system, with a modest crew. The Gestalt pilot, Ariane Yeong, and her companion and service Replika, Elster. The ship was a small scouting ship on its way to the Oort Cloud on a suicidal scouting mission. They either find an inhabitable dwarf planet or large asteroid, or they run out of air, energy supplies, and food out in the vast expanse of space. Ariane Yeong had grown up on Rotfront, but her parents always knew that Ariane would eventually leave and try her luck adventuring across the solar system. The Venetian War was over. Travel across the solar system was picking up. Maybe she could find a better life for herself somewhere else. But on the Penrose, they were still many cycles away from that dreadful fate, that coin flip that would determine their lives. Well, a coin flip is a 50-50 chance, odds that Ariane would gladly take. Their true odds of finding a suitable planetoid was far, far less in their favor. She didn't want to think about it. She'd rather think about the painting that she was working on, or how Elster was finally learning how to dance. But whatever happens, they'd be together. Ariane was happy in spite of it all. Out here, she's free to explore art, her imperial serial novels, and be silly, and not have to worry about who was around her. Her routine with Elster was unremarkable and boring, but it was cozy and comforting. In an infinite, uncaring world, she had everything that she wanted right there with her. She was getting to spend her days with Elster, being free to work on her art, and read and listen to her songs. In spite of how it would all end eventually for her, she couldn't think of another way that she'd like to spend her days. Elster had entered the room, and hesitated awkwardly at the edge of it, before coming closer. According to her neural patterns and the instructions Ariane had received, she was not to socialize with the Elster unit, nor let them engage in any artistic expression. But Ariane couldn't imagine her Elster unit not laughing or dancing, or stumbling in her awkward attempts at human humor, or even painting as of late. Their relationship would be considered inappropriate or deranged anywhere else. But it was either taking this mission on the Penrose or accepting a position at the mining operation on Sierpinski, and they wouldn't have been together there. Here, they could spend their days looking out at the sea of stars from the observation deck. She was glad that the Penrose line of ships came with a cozy observation deck. They were alone now, traveling out of the solar system at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. No one could stop them from living out who they wanted to be. Even radio transmissions took years to reach them out this far. Their journey still had many cycles ahead before they'd know their fate. Her headaches were getting worse though. Elster at first thought was radiation poisoning, but not this time. Radiation would also affect Elster, but only Ariane was getting headaches, with nightmares of fleshy tentacles reaching across space. She'd heard about some things like that back in Rotfront in the bookstore. Bioresonance. The Calibri unit that she had asked was very hesitant to tell her more, whatever this bioresonance was. Ariane and Elster didn't know that at that moment the stars were screaming at them, and the red eye was focused keenly on them. Ariane approached Elster, put her arms around her, and rested her head on her chest, her white hair covering her face a little bit. Elster returned the hug and took a deep breath. Ariane closed her eyes and tried to commit to memory every detail of this moment, trying to make it feel like it lasted forever. How the air felt, Elster's slow breathing, her cold hands, the music coming from the phonogram. She wished she could make these days last forever. In a shit world that didn't care about them, they could be together out here. Before starting with the events of the game proper, let's talk a little bit about our protagonist, Elster. Elster, Ship Technician Replika, Magpie. Generation 5 Cosmo Pioneer, specialist replicas designed to assist orbital missions or recon missions. Elsters have a biomechanical with carbon fiber reinforced polyethylene shell and titanium skeleton frame. Elsters, like all other replicas, have oxidant blood and bioengineered flesh that is inedible for Gestalts. Don't eat your cyborg. A versatile combat engineer unit, primarily designed for orbital service. These tough and stoic loners are best suited as specialist sappers or scouts. Their technical knowledge and combat capabilities make these units true survivalists, especially when in their iconic white and blue heavy combat configuration, which sports bullet-resistant armor plating on their chest and forearms. Since the original neural pattern for this unit was lost with the destruction of the Central Neural Archive on Veneta, new Elster units have been produced based on a decommissioned unit from the Penrose program. Elster units were chosen for the Penrose program for their adaptability and reliability under long-term isolation conditions. Stoic and reserved, Elster units have a relatively stable neural pattern. It's best for you to leave it alone and interact with the Elster unit as little as possible. Elster neural patterns was a soldier of Venetan origin, so their needs are basic. Avoid talking to the Elster unit about the war. Penrose vessels are fitted with specialized calibration pods, which may help with persona stabilization. To avoid resurfacing of Gestalt memories, do not show or give the Elster unit photographs, especially of soldiers during the war. Do not show the Elster unit movies or let it listen to music. Do not try to befriend the Elster unit. This characterizes Elster as being a unit that was supposed to be distant from their Gestalt commanders, emotionless and cold, whose only purpose is to maintain the vessel. A note on replicas: replicas are created by copying neural patterns uploaded from a Gestalt or a person, usually picked for some specific reason or characteristic. So by inheriting the neural patterns of the donor, replicas also inherit a lot of habits, inclinations, and behaviors from the original human donor. At the start of the events of the game, Elster wakes up in the Penrose 512. Home sweet home, right? But it wasn't really home if she was alone. If she wasn't there. She searches around and finds a picture of Ariane. Of Alina. She has brown hair. Ariane has white hair. Or was that backwards? The dashboard tells you the ship won't be flying again due to damage from the crash, and the dashboard is unable to identify what planet they are on. How did she get here? Is this real? The dashboard also indicates the location of the Gestalt pilot is unknown. Where could she be? Before leaving the Penrose through the airlock, Elster takes a moment to look at the home where she finally knew happiness with Ariane. Her old bunk where she would read her stories and paint, and they would fall asleep together. She always had paintings going. She tried her best to remember the small details of those moments, especially the melody they would dance to, which played in her head. She must find her. Elster steps out into the cold wind to explore this planet. Elster notices a large stone gate looming over her. Crossing the threshold, Elster sees a way down into a red borehole. A hole in the wall can be found at the bottom of the borehole. Elster crawls in. The hole opens up into a radio room, old Imperial novel series which have been banned, a book on the King in Yellow, a safe with 3 locks, pictures of the Isle of Death on the wall, along with the flag of the Yusan Nation. This was the radio room where Ariane used to live and work. These were her books and her pictures. One book stands out, the Book of the King in Yellow. We open the book. Sierpinski S-52. Elster comes to in front of a mirror, looking at herself. She must find her. She'd made a promise. She wanted to be together with her again. Entering the lobby of the mining facility, Sierpinski, you find a welcome pamphlet for new arrivals to the facility. It reads, "You've been selected or have elected to be relocated by Yeong to S-23 Sierpinski. Located on Leng, at the frontier of the solar system, S-23 Sierpinski is a perfect place for new beginnings. At our prestigious vocational school facility, you will learn new skills to shape your future as a productive member of our wonderful nation. Here, you will learn all about mineral extraction, ore refinement, and munition production, helping the war effort against the remnants of the Empire. And of course, learning is not just about theory. Aeon lets you earn your share while practicing your new craft right at the workplace. Concerned about your friends, family, or former colleagues? Ask a protector about our ration sharing program. A portion of your ration marks will be sent to a beneficiary of your choice. Sierpinski is a mining school and operation facility at the very edge of the solar system, on the dwarf ice planet at the very edge, where the sun's light barely reaches. This planet Leng was the final frontier. Sierpinski was a remote and lone settlement for those looking to escape the inner solar system and willing to brave the unknown. But what would happen if they dug too deep though? What would the stone doorway bring, and what was on the other side? Entering deeper into the facility, we get the first glimpse of what happened here. We find the infected remains of one of the replicas that help run the facility, covered by a black film or goo that Elster is wise not to touch. One of the affected Yule units. If the contagion has spread to the entire facility here, there would be more Yule units that have met a similar fate. Yules were the workhorse of the Empire, so a remote mining facility like this one would have a lot of them in their replica population. We find a note on the Yule replicas. Yules. These units serve as a standard multi-purpose unit of the Yusan nation, deployed in domestic tasks while serving as cooks, nurses, cleaning, as well as simple medical and office workers and teachers. Yule units are the backbone of the Yusan nation's workforce. These elegant, multi-purpose worker units are suited for all kinds of domestic tasks, like cleaning, cooking, and simple medical and office work. Yules are highly social and get along well with each other, as well as most other replica models. While unfit for combat, their lightweight frame makes them a prime choice for distant facilities where supplies are limited. Yules tend to form large groups and like to sing and dance, as the original neural pattern for this unit was a ballet dancer. Persona degradation can easily be prevented in this unit by making sure they have access to music. Always place at least one mirror in Yule dorms, as they have a strong urge to check their appearance at regular intervals. Yule personas stabilize by keeping a tidy appearance and through regular social interactions. Yules often organize in groups of roughly 10 units and give each other themed nicknames. Is anyone still alive here? What is this contagion? It seems to get worse the further down Elster went. The dead infected units showed complete corruption of the replica, down to the organ and the artificial flesh. The cameras still seem to be functioning, as Elster gets the feeling she's being watched by somebody, or someone. We open into a room with a large elevator shaft, and we find a star replica unit, wounded and leaning against the column. She tells us to leave. The facility is lost. Elster shows her the picture that she's been carrying, but the woman has brown hair now. Was this a picture of Alina or Ariane? Elster's memory felt foggy since crossing the stone gate. Elster got confused for a moment, but she was sure that she needed to find her. She didn't like the feeling of being without her. The star unit tells us that the Gestalts were sent to the lower levels of the mine in an attempt to keep them safe. Well, that means Elster is going deeper underground. The information we have available on the star replica tells us Starling, the standard model of the Protector security technicians. Fitted with extended legs, star units gracefully tower over most Gestalts. Despite their heavy armor, they can move swiftly with their long strides. Their cool and detached demeanor allows them to analyze situations with objectivity and deploy force as required. Trained in close combat and riot control techniques, they operate best in small squads led by an officer star unit equipped with a ballistic shield. Despite their normally laid-back demeanor, stars have a strong internal hierarchy, which is important to take into consideration when promoting units to officers. Not promoting a respected unit or promoting a unit low in status can lead to friction within dorms. Stars will occasionally develop in-group rules involving physical punishments. It is recommended to allow some officers to own military weapons as fetish objects to stabilize their persona. This replica was one of hundreds, if not thousands, on this facility. Replicas were integral to the facility, more than the Gestalts, some would say. The star units were part of the Protectorate, the armed guards supposed to maintain rule and protect the humans and the objective under the leadership of the Stork units. The commander of the entire facility was the Falk replica, aided by an administrator Adler replica. The backbone of the workforce here was the combination of Ada and Yule units. The Yusal nation is highly reliant on replicas, which it uses for work, and for Gestalt population control, functioning as police or military. The higher ranking replica models, namely the Colibri, Adler, and Falker units, hold authority over other replicas as well. Replicas seem to stand on a higher rung of the societal ladder than the Gestalts they work with and oversee. In the only inhabited locations we will observe, only replicas are in position of authority. In Sierpinski S-52, replicas hold command, administration, and law and rule enforcement posts. Meanwhile, Rotfront Sector C's Block Warden is a Colibri unit and is itself under the threat of decommission by a team of protector units. The Gestalts, or humans, are here for a variety of reasons. They weren't suitable for other types of services, volunteers trying to get more ration marks, or political prisoners being disappeared or re-educated. Not much further, you find a bloody woman holding a knife, standing over an infected replica, Isa Ito. She says that we don't belong here, and it looks like she's taken a hit or two. She also looks very willing to use that knife that she's holding, as evidenced by the dead Yule unit in front of her. She warns us that there's something wrong with this place. She says she's looking for someone and is going to continue forward. She's looking for her sister called Erica. We find one of Alina Sale's diary entries. She describes the flu going around and how a Stork unit chewed her out last time she fainted when she had the flu and was on a work shift. Life in the nation was cruel, but the times of war against the Empire necessitated it. In level B2, Elster find more Yule units that have fallen to the disease that ravaged this place. Some of them continuing to do what they would have done in life, working domestic chores, preparing meals, cleaning the kitchens. Yules loved to work together and be together, and echoes of that remained. Facility had fallen in disrepair. We find trash has accumulated in the hallways, and almost every room in disrepair. While the facility on Lieg was never even approaching luxurious or spacious, it had at one time been a cozy and warm home to many. Bunk beds, communal bathrooms, chow hall. The Gestalt and replica workers of the Sierpinski facility were never truly alone. The only semblance of privacy that existed was when you closed the curtain on your bunk bed. Communities and friendships were born in this routine and in this form of communal living, in which you were never alone. But in time, you do get comfortable in the company of others. While awkward at first, never having much space for privacy, once you get used to it, real bonds of camaraderie, friendship, and genuine caring appeared. At least as a worker here, you'd be part of something. You'll always have company, companions to check up on you when you're sick, that understand how you feel on a long day, that know your little quirks of behavior in and out. Sometimes your roommate knew how to fix the fans when they stopped working, or was willing to sneak you food when you were in medical bed rest after a safety accident. You would always miss the open spaces and having some privacy, but over time, it felt you grew into a family with your crew, and there was joy to be found in their routine digging and mining. Teams started to work really well together and earned some more off time for themselves when they hit quotas early. The Adler unit apparently understood the need for stable and healthy mining teams. We meet another replica Storch unit in the rationing office, standing tall in the corner at just shy of 8 feet tall. Dressed in combat white, holding a rifle. She says that Elster shouldn't be here since the base is on lockdown. Elster units were meant for long-range space travel, not to be sustaining a mining operation. This Storch unit is the protector controller of the floor. Here we find Alina Sale's West Wing key. The Storch unit tells you that the commander is sick and so is everybody else. Looks like a disease cut its way through the entire facility. Later, we would find out that this Storch unit was Sibin, the last non-corrupted Storch in the facility, and the protector controller in charge of the Star and Storch units. Sibin coordinates the day and night shift controllers, reshuffling the Storch and Star units to serve both time slots in an attempt to organize the remaining units against the spreading virus. She had noticed Adler's mental decay and proposed a plan to try to pull the Calibris in to help keep him in check after they lost their commander, Falk. P.S. Keep an eye on the administrator unit. Since the incident, he's been acting stranger than usual. Without the commander to keep him in check, we will have to ask Colibri for help. Looks like the Falk and Adler unit have been acting weird since some incident. Something that might have happened at the bottom of the mine? Despite this, Siebin's plan clearly fails by the events of the game, as the facility had been fully lost. Adler is still deranged and free, and no word yet on the commander, along with the Calibris having been nearly destroyed. Flashback to a cold, remote, frigid radio station. Posters suggest that this is Rotfront. Elster sees the same forbidden books that we saw back at the beginning. The King in Yellow, while the wind was howling. Simple, mass-produced rations. But at least the books and the plants gave the station some personality. Here, we get a glimpse into Ariane's old life during military service at a remote radio signal station. She would always keep art or novels around, even though the nation was trying to beat the love of arts out of her. But she always kept on loving and trying to find beauty regardless of how bleak her environment was. Her soul was a bright spot in a dark world. Very few things in the nation these days was done for love or beauty anymore. The nation favored practicality and a utilitarian mindset. We're back at the mining facility after the flashback. The last room to explore on the floor is the interrogation room. It's covered in gore from a recent questioning. The nation had at least tacitly approved of the use of some extreme interrogation tactics, and the Adler replica models seem okay ordering for it. Seems like a lot of workers expired during interrogation. The Yusan nation didn't care about anything other than victory and power, and they always had more Gestalt workers or replicas on hand. And on Sierpinski, they could get away with a lot more since the Gestalt there had been sent there for political re-education. Continuing our descent, the next level is the hospital. Most of it newly built, but it looks like it got heavy usage when the contagion started to spread through the facility. Here we find part 2 of Alina Sale's diary. She had woken up but isn't allowed to leave her room, even after healing from a fall during a work shift. She had heard 2 Yules discussing that they are running out of staff. Replica and Gestalt workers both kept going missing down in the lower layers of the mines. They had found something as they dug deeper into the planet. Alina was still very worried about Elster. Elster finds notes detailing the progression of the contagion on Yule units. The disease progressed similarly in both Gestalts and replicas. High fever, hypotension, vomiting oxidant fluid, and dehydration. Skin peels within 5 cycles. Decline of vision quality and the ability to communicate. Gestalts usually die at this point. Replicas might vary. Attempts at quarantine have failed, and all teams are losing people. We find a living surviving U unit, the only one left, here waiting for her end. She was a nurse in her office. The poor replica looks broken, just waiting for her time to fall to the disease or to the other corrupted replicas. Elster felt bad for her, but there was nothing that she could do. They were stranded out here on this far corner of the solar system. The nation wouldn't waste resources trying to save them. Elster had to find Alina, and she was further down to the mines. Elster finds some thermite flares. These might burn hot enough to keep the infected replicas down for good. Elster finds a VHS tape. Playing it, you have a flashback to a metro train on Rotfront. A young woman looking desolate and alone at the far end of the train. She's recognizable by her white hair. It must be Ariane, but she was young on Rotfront. A flash. She's gone. Elster is back at the facility, continuing her exploration. She runs into an ambush in the sleeping ward by 4 hitting hunchbacks. What were they before? They must have been auras at this level. Aura replicas are Generation 2 low-cost, general-purpose replicas used in repair, maintenance, construction, and production of industrial goods. These strong and heavy workers are a perfect fit for work in construction and production of industrial goods. In many places throughout our nation, auras have already replaced all Gestalt workers in fields like climate forming and explosive ordnance removal. Even though they might seem like quiet simpletons, do not underestimate auras. While they may not show it, they judge those who are rude or unkind harshly, and will quietly share this judgment with their entire cadre. Auras get along best with Yules, who tend to be patient and friendly, and have a talent for reading auras' expressionless faces. In many facilities, auras will construct service tunnels accessible only to them, often under floors and in walls. Unstable units might retreat into these tunnels. It is not recommended to attempt to retrieve them. Aura personalities can be stabilized by allowing them access to plants to take care of, ideally colorful flowers or trees. Elster finds a way down and she drops down, and here we see something big. A Mina replica. She has been infected and looks angry. Elster had learned about the Mina units from a note. When it comes to dangerous cargo, heavy machinery, and hazardous environments, other model rivals the Mina unit with their high security power armor bodies. Even in lethal radiation, under crushing pressure, and in zero G, they keep their calm demeanor and show exemplary teamwork. Despite their hulking bodies, underneath their face shields, a standard Generation 3 cranial construction can be found, making maintenance and social interfacing as easy as with any other replica model. Please note that the Mina neural pattern is not suited for combat use. For combat applications, the Sapper variant should be used, which employs a combat-capable persona in the same frame. The neural pattern of the Mina is extremely stable. Little has to be done to keep Minas happy. They get along well with most other models, thanks to their sometimes submissive, sometimes motherly personality. Unlike other models, diary keeping is not mandatory for persona stabilization. Small stuffed animals may be given as fetish objects, though those resembling cats should be avoided, as they might cause resurfacing Gestalt memories. After dealing with the Mina, Elster meets the Adler replica, the Administrator. This is the Administrator, Cybin, the storage unit, had asked the Colibris to keep an eye on. It was this Adler that was watching Elster explore the facility through the security cameras. Unfortunately, Elster wouldn't be getting any help finding Alina from him. She's pushed down an elevator shaft, only to have her fall broken by dozens of dead Elster units like herself. This isn't the first time the Adler unit had seen her. He knew before she said anything what she was looking for. And this wasn't the first time the Adler unit had pushed Elster down the elevator shaft. Time meant something different here. Adler has said, "You shouldn't have returned." How many times has she been here? Let's learn a little bit more about the Adler replicas. Adler. Adler units are in charge of managing and overseeing all administrative tasks for the entire facility. They have the responsibility of allowing operational command units, such as the Folk, to focus on direct control of the Protector units. Adler units are designed to work as a direct counterpart to Folk units, serving as her assistant by taking care of necessary paperwork and calculations. Adlers are described as being best in isolation, not working well with each other. They are designed to be heavily dependent on their Falk units, especially from an emotional support standpoint. They are also susceptible to bioresonance, making them easy to control. Likely, an addition that correlates with their dependency on heavily bioresonant Falks. However, they can get bored fairly easily and require many fetish items to remain stable. So this Adler unit appears to have escaped the contagion, and he is still trying to stop Elster from going deeper. Well, Elster wasn't stopping until she was back with Ariane. Her descent continues. A flashback. Isa fell asleep waiting for Erica. Schools in Rotfront are of a utilitarian block style. Cement and practical bare-bones presentations. No posters, colors, or decorations. We see a group of children bullying a young girl with white hair. We try to stop the bullying, and the flashback ends. B5, service level. Elster crawls out of the elevator shaft, filled with dead bodies. On this level, we find the living accommodations for the protectors of the facility, particularly the star replicas. Elster finds an angry note. The star replicas are angry that the Yules are listening to the same song non-stop since the piano room was locked down. The facility was currently under quarantine in an attempt to stop the contagion. The star dorm and the piano room, where the Yules like to congregate, shared a wall. Someone didn't think this through when they were planning the layout of the facility. The angry note states and displays the cruelty or the harshness of the star units. This explains that the storage unit likely snuck over to their dorm and impaled the music player with a knife to silence the song, likely in the process causing mass persona degradation of the Yules and helping spread the corruption in the process, all because they were annoyed by the music. Down the hall, we find a team of corrupted storage units. Even in the corrupted state, it looks like they still follow the hierarchy they were used to when they were still operational. Bed mattresses stacked in the hallway or leaning against the wall. Maybe the stars of the storages made a stand here? Or maybe they were clearing out bunk beds as their numbers dwindled to the disease, and whatever else in the lower levels was making them disappear one by one in the darkness of this cold, hostile, remote planet of Leng. Alright, so time to learn more about the storage units. Storages are Generation 5 combat lead replicas. These units are deployed as overwatch and coordination of stars. They are called this in part due to their height of over 240 centimeters, 7 feet 10 inches. Each cadre of Protector Security Technicians is overseen by a controller unit, the most common of which is the STCR Stork type, one of the tallest replica models. Thanks to their extended legs, Storks figuratively and literally keep a constant bird's eye view of any situation, ready to direct and coordinate their assigned security technicians. Their tough, no-sense demeanor, though sometimes described as brutal or even cruel, makes them a perfect fit as unwavering sentinels of order. Storage units initially have a short temper. Training them in patience early after deployment is key, as their neural patterns are less stable than other models. Failing to do so may yield an extremely volatile personality prone to cruelty and violence. A common strategy is pairing them closely with an older star unit. Storage's personality stabilize by showering or bathing. Books on history and mythology work well as fetish objects. Through the flood control ladders, we also have access to the B7 protector accommodations and the B8 controller accommodations. At the Yeong facility, Sierpinski, jump down a level through a bloody hole gives us access to the level below, the controller accommodations. We see a cutscene with Adler and Ito, who is still armed with a knife. Isa is attempting to enter Falk's quarters. Adler is stopping her by saying that the commander isn't taking visitors. He approaches Isa, claiming to offer assistance, but Isa is clearly suspicious of his intentions. Elster continues to explore this floor, hoping to find a way down to the mines. Entering a room with a painting of the Isle of the Dead, she is bombarded with images, static, and noise. As the corrupted Calibri unit in this room uses bioresonance to distort Elster's senses. Elster would later find out that the Calibri's senses were under attack by this painting, and the presence of the painting would accelerate their persona destabilization. Calibris were a special type of bioresonance capable replica units. Let's check out a few notes on the Calibri replicas and their bioresonance capabilities. A marvel of modern technology, the Calibri is the most capable bioresonance unit ever produced, except for the Falk. Each Protector Falk unit is aided by a cadre of Calibri unit adjuncts, which can amplify her bioresonance signals, as well as producing their own. Despite their diminutive build, Calibris are one of the most effective Protector units, able to directly influence the mind of replicas and gestalts, extract information non-verbally, and communicate among themselves instantly in the full bandwidth of the sense. The Calibri's bioresonance is the closest recreation of a true hive mind. Great care should be given to Calibris. Their neural patterns are very unstable, and their bioresonance module makes them very susceptible to influence from others. Like most bioresonant individuals, Calibris will often subconsciously create an emotional feedback loop, imitating and then broadcasting the emotions of those around them, acting as a sort of amplifier. While they are trained to recognize and disengage this behavior, already unstable units can sometimes spiral into persona degradation. Due to their bioresonant connection, neural pattern development in Calibris varies less than in other models. The constant exchange of memories and emotions between units of a cadre acts as a safety net that buffers extreme changes. However, once the majority of units in a cadre degrade, they will drag the remaining units down with them. Because of this, it's important to decommission Calibri units instantly when they begin to degrade. For persona stabilization, Calibri should have access to a well-stocked library. A lone Calibri unit seemed to suspect Adler of hiding something early into the decay of the facility, stating, "Keep an eye on Adler. He's hiding something from us." There was nothing in his diary, but when I probed his mind, they were memories of an Elster unit working as Sierpinski. There's no record of that model of replica ever being deployed here. An order for a single unit for some survey work in the mines was briefly considered, but no new orders were made due to the commander's sickness. So Elster was never really here? Is she here now? She didn't know, but she had to find Ariane. The Adler unit has started to deteriorate once the Falk unit went through the stone doorway they had found at the bottom of the mine. The other replicas had caught on to this and were concerned. So was the Adler breaking down? Or was reality breaking down? Elster sees a propaganda poster of the Falk unit, the Wonderwaffle, the Wonder Weapon. The Falk unit is the commander of the protector forces in this facility and therefore in charge of the facility. Standing at 250 centimeters, or 8 feet 2 inches, the Falk units are imposing physically, towering over all Gestalt and replicas. They are also extremely powerful bioresonance beings with the power of manipulating the physical world around them. On this floor, we will also find a large storage dorm. Elster will also find 3 dead Storches and a few other corrupted ones spread across this room. Most likely, the corrupted stars and Yules rushed into this room and overwhelmed the unprepared Storch units. While they are great at fighting, being ambushed by enemies with no warning likely could have been too much for them to handle without preparation. With this being the main storage dorm in the facility, this was likely a fatal blow to the security structure of Sierpinski. We find an entry to Adler's diary that shows issues with the Calibri. Adler dreams of his Gestalt life and a woman with white hair. The Elster Adler remembers, but was never there, wore an orange chest piece. We also find out with having lost the Falk commander, Adler strongly started missing her and longing for her. It seems like Adler was on a similar quest as with Elster, trying to get back together with somebody that he cared about. He wanted to be back with his commander, Falk. Regrettably, the commander was never the same after crossing the red stone doorway into infinity that they found at the bottom of the mine. Getting to the library, Elster noticed someone comforting themselves and weeping in the corner, an uncorrupted Calibri unit. She had been missing her cadre and was hiding. She misses singing together with them. They used to be as one and sung together. "I've never been so alone," she confesses to us. She wishes to be with the others that have already turned. They are not alone. She must be the last uncorrupted one of her type, and it's anguish for a Calibri unit to be by herself, after having spent so much time connected to all of her peers. This one is truly alone for the first time. We find another confusing Adler diary entry. All the entries have the same date, but the entries themselves seem unconnected, as if he had wrote them on different instances of the same day. As you read the diary, you see that he himself doesn't remember writing the earlier entries in the diary. This implies that he was in a loop of some sort, and on every cycle, he'd write an entry on the same day, not knowing who had written the previous one. Adler starts to realize that he is in a sort of time loop or a cycle. Time is not flowing naturally in Sierpinski right now. Elster gets access to the elevator and leaves the living quarters for the mine proper. We see an encounter between Adler and Isa. Adler states that they've done this countless times before. Isa then sneaks up on Adler and stabs him in the eye, causing him to fall into the hole, as well as causing him to drop his rifle, which she takes. Just a side note here, Signalis seems to have a very strong theme of people having their eyes damaged or hurt. Lilith, Ito, Elster, Adler, Isa all have one of their eyes injured at some point. This represents the importance of not getting stabbed in your eye. Entering the mine, it opens up into the first large cavernous area we have found so far on this journey. Floodlights are found everywhere, since there was work with the dangerous 2 nanometer microstring being used here. Elster spots a Mina unit that isn't corrupted. She's called Bio. Talking to this Mina, you realize why these replicas are so easy to get along with. Even under these horrid conditions, Bio still manages to be sweet and selfless. She's okay with dying, since she says, replicas are just drops in the ocean. Elster feels bad for this Mina, and wishes she could do more. But they are all alone, out here on the edge of humanity. With a sigh, Elster walks away. She must find Ariane. Stacks of mining lasers against the wall of the mine give you an idea of how many units must have been working down here. Elster imagined that the mining units might have found some joy working together. There is a camaraderie to be found, being part of a work shift and toiling alongside others. Mining units were so sweet and cooperative. They must have worked well together and watched out for each other. Alina's third diary entry, detailing the worsening outbreak. She spots the first infected she's seen as the contagion spread. A corrupted Yeong, she ran as fast as she could from it. We must be approaching whatever drove the contagion and corrupted the facility. We are nearing the bottom of the mine and the facility. What did they find buried down here that humanity and replicas were never meant to find? What is on the other side of the red stone gateway? They dug holes into the ground where Earth's pores ought to have sufficed. Things have learned to walk that ought to crawl. The stone doorway seems to be at the center of it all. It corrupted the Falk commander, and then the corruption started spreading to everybody else. We have a flashback on the beach. This beach resembles the painting you saw of the Isle of the Dead that seemed to be degrading the Colibris. You see rocks on the beach, white ones, round, but as you get closer you find out that they're not rocks but the top of skulls. Under a dreary night sky, you find a poem talking about a sea of flesh calling out to you. The red eye must be watching. You put the thoughts of cosmic eldritch horrors being involved in all this aside, and the flashback ends. We're back on our quest. Proceeding down, we get to nowhere. The nethermost caverns are not for the phantoming of eyes that see, for their marvels are strange and terrific. Cursed the ground where dead thoughts live new, and oddly bodied, and evil the mind that is held by no head, till out of corruption horrid life springs, and dull scavengers of earthly wax crafty to vex it, and swell monstrous to plague it. Great holes are secretly dug, where earth's pores ought to suffice, and things have learned to walk that ought to crawl. The Festival, H.P. Lovecraft. Elster comes into a morgue with deactivated corrupted replicas. Why would this facility have such a large morgue this far down? Is Elster beneath the mine or somewhere else entirely? Exploring the area, Elster gets turned around. She thought she'd entered the room from one direction, but then it felt like a completely different direction. She kept getting turned around. She wasn't able to pull up the schematics for her location like she had on every other floor. Where was she? Where was Ariane? The more she explored this area, the architecture and the layout started to make less and less sense. Why would you have large suspended catways underneath the surface where compact tunnels made more sense to build and were safer? Why was the meadow in this area, which seemed to be the newest, covered in rust? The rest of the facility has seen some damage, but nothing like the massive amounts of rust and decay on this level. It's almost as if she wasn't in Sierpinski anymore. How could she have gotten there? What had happened? Elster finds a note that says, "Leave this place." Not the worst advice, she agreed. Elster also starts to find large pulsating, fleshy organs and tentacles taking up parts of this facility. Something alive was growing and pushing itself into this place, filling up rooms with its fleshy, warm, wet, pulsating tentacles and bags of organs. We continue our journey, and we find the disgusting and terrifying cage monster. It looks like an amalgamation of bodies trapped inside a cage. We also see Isa with the rifle that she had gotten from the Adler unit. After a short confrontation, where Elster distracts the cage monster long enough for Isa to put an anti-tank round through it, finally killing it. The knockback from the rifle knocks her out, so Elster picks her up and moves her to a nearby bed. Here, Isa will have a chance to recover from the impact. Looking around, the walls are entirely made of flesh, and gore is everywhere. It feels like the room that Elster is in is alive, and the pulsating is the blood flowing through the walls. Isa wakes up a little bit later. She thanks you, and says that she's going to continue on her journey to find her sister. Isa and her sister have been through so much, growing up on Rotfront, running their parents' store, and having spent their entire lives together. Isa didn't want to be apart from her sister. We also find another one of Alina's diary entries. She's made it down here, to wherever here is. Her memory is getting blurred, and can't remember how long she's been down there. Her brown hair is turning white, and she's started to call herself a different name. Not Alina, but Ariane. She's remembering a different name, a different life. The line between her and Alina is blurring. Regardless, Elster must find her. All she wanted to do was to be back with her. After unlocking the door on this level, Elster crosses the threshold to continue her descent. We finally see what is at the bottom of the mine. The stone gate we keep seeing in our visions. The stone gate that Adler mentioned had corrupted the Falk and started the spread of death and misery through Sierpinski. Adler, with a knife in his eye, mentions that he's been here so many times before, but has never returned, kneeling in front of the stone gate. The commander never spoke about what was on the other side. Whatever it was, it had made her fall sick. Elster didn't know what to expect on the other side of the gate. She had a feeling of deja vu. She knows she's somehow been here before, that this has happened before. She steps into the red stone gateway and into eternity. An infinite red desert spreads out here. Other Elsters are found lying dead against black pillars. The Penrose can be seen in the far distance. The line between Alina and Ariane is eroded even further. We find a note saying not to eat the replicas out of desperation on long-range survey missions if supplies run out. The biosynthetic flesh can make you sick. Replicas have a higher success rate so keeping the replica operational rather than prolonging your own suffering may be preferable. We see the instructions Elster and Ariane had received as part of Phase 2 of the Penrose program. By our calculations, 1500 cycles of mission time will have passed when you receive this message. Congratulations, comrade. By now, you should have become fully acclimatized to your new life aboard your ship. As you approach the Oort cloud, your search for new worlds will begin. Utilizing long-range sensors, you will scout for valuable resources, habitable worlds, or signs of alien life. Remember to rely on your replica to assist you in maintaining your vessel. We all wish you great success in your mission. Elster and Ariane were supposed to receive the Phase 3 instructions at 3000 cycles. That'd be another 3 or 4 years. What would those Phase 3 instructions bring? Elster finds another note from Ariane. Was this from the future? Lost another tooth. There was so much blood. My hands were shaking. Why is my hair falling out? I can't sleep. I just want to sleep. Please let me sleep. A scene plays out that is a dark foreshadowing of things to come. Elster in combat configuration lies dead next to the cryo chamber. The cryo chamber itself has been taken over by the fleshy infestation we saw in Nowhere. How did things end up for Ariane and Elster in the end? What would happen when they received the Phase 3 instructions? Once they reach their destination, Elster rearms herself and takes the ballistic armor. She would be putting this to good use. Elster jumps down yet another flash hole, following the blood streaks. Elster has a flashback, back on the Isle. She sees a red light in the distance. We find a poem about something eternal calling out to us to join it. But I fear the dark sea will swallow me. The red eye is watching. A poem about something older than humanity, sleeping deep below the ground, which calls out to people at night. The stone doorway must be something ancient and from a time forbidden to humanity. Rotfront. Elster comes to. Back at the bathroom, we started at, but with more flies and blood, now wearing combat armor, near the entrance of the Sierpinski facility. But everything is fleshy now. The note from Adler about the wall safes is nearly unreadable. Reality is breaking at the seams. Elster reads another note, saying don't forget to like the video. What could that mean? She'd heard about Gestalts sharing social media videos and voting on them. Gestalts were a simple form of life. Sometimes, just seeing a number increase seems to make them happy and stabilize their personas. Elster finds the old Ito family store and gets access through the back door. The password was the twin sister's birthday. Here, we see Isa one last time. We see Adler saying goodbye to Falk. Adler says the world was torn apart and put back together. Everything had been distorted. Everyone's memories throughout time seem to be blending together. In the atrium, we can see the radio station where we picked up the book of the King in Yellow, the room where we started our journey, all through a hole in the wall. Rotfront is the community where Ariane and the Ito sisters grew up. We somehow find ourselves transported to a projection of Ariane's hometown. And maybe in the past, perhaps it was due to the power of the Stone Gate, or Ariane's bioresonance, or maybe a combination of the two, we don't know. Here, Elster gets a chance to get a first-hand look at the events that shaped Ariane and that led her to signing up for the Penrose program. Ariane used to work at the Yeong photo store. It's here where she might have seen the picture of Lilith Ito and Alina Sale. Whether this was the cause of what's to come or a premonition is unknown. But there is a link between Alina and Ariane. Elster didn't know it at the time, but the Gestalt her neural patterns originated from is the other person in the picture, Lilith. Lilith was eventually used as a template for the Elster replica unit. Alina and Elster, well, Lilith, the original, knew each other and were part of the same unit in the Venetian War. We can assume that they grew very close together. This revelation shines a small light on the connections across space and time between Alina, Elster, and Ariane. Exploring Rotfront, we find a meat grinder and use it to get down level. Flesh has also invaded this part of Ariane's memories. Before continuing, let's recap a few points about our protagonist. Ariane. Ariane Yeong was born on the planet of Leng. Sometime during her life, Iris, her mother, and a radio officer would be stationed on the nation's colony of Rotfront. Here, a young Ariane would grow up with little contact with the outside world, knowing nothing of general social contact outside of her mother, leading her to develop an interest in art, particularly painting. Ariane would later move to a more urban district in Rotfront with her aunt Camilla. Ariane would begin attending school at a late age. Attending Mandelbrot Polytechnic, Ariane would struggle in adhering to Rotfront's strict society that frowned upon Ariane's interest in art, along with her unorthodox hair color. This would result in bullying during her school years. It's during this time that she became friends with the Ito sisters. Ariane had taken up a tenure as a store clerk in her family's business. Incidents of bullying resulted in Ariane suffering from insomnia, anxiety, and depression. She never got the feeling that she belonged. Sometime during her education, Ariane would cite a poster of the nation's Penrose program. This poster would stay with her for years to come. While working at the photo store, she would encounter an Imperial spy who was terrified of her when the spy detected her bioresonant abilities. Ariane was unaware of the presence of these powers that she had. Growing up, Ariane would continue to grow in interest of the arts, taking up hobbies such as drawing as well, something that was frowned upon greatly. It was recommended that Ariane be assigned to military service to beat the interest in arts out of her. As per her teacher's recommendation, Ariane was assigned to compulsory military service on Rotfront, where she would receive training as a radio officer, much akin to her mother. Ariane would not go to this with her friends, the Ito sisters, leaving her feeling alone, along with being very disconnected. The attempt to end Ariane's appreciation and dabbling in the arts was, however, unaffected by the end of Ariane's military service. After 2 years of service, Ariane applied to the Penrose program, but Yeong, in charge of her assignments, would give Ariane notice that she was to be stationed on the S-23 Sierpinski facility. Ariane did not desire this assignment, and somehow did end up joining the Penrose program. The reassignment to the Penrose program saw her stationed aboard one of the program's vessels, Penrose 512. Ariane set off on her exploration of the cosmos for life and planets, as per the Penrose program's mission, alongside a Replika combat engineer. Early on into her cycles on the Penrose, Ariane would quickly take a liking to the engineer, a Elster-type replica known as Elster 512, otherwise known as Elster. The two began a friendship despite the program's guidelines, with Ariane doing forbidden activities such as playing the unit music and watching movies alongside it. Ariane's admiration for Elster grew during this time, with her finding Elster's familiar Venetian accent cute. Soon after, Ariane would fall in love and begin a relationship with Elster, the two bonding over their travels aboard the Penrose 512. In time, they would grow to become each other's worlds, the only thing that each other needed to feel content and happy. Alina Sale was a Gestalt worker at Sierpinski S-23, as well as a veteran of the Venetian War. We see pictures of her on a photograph wearing a military uniform, presumably next to Lilith Ito, along with other postcards depicting different officers. This photo is labeled People's Army 5th Venetian Infantry Division Unit 12, signifying that Alina once served in the armed forces. At some point after the war, Alina transfers to the facility at Sierpinski. Lilith Ito. It is believed that Lilith Ito served as the original neural pattern for the Elster unit. Elster's Gestalt was a Venetian soldier whose neural patterns were uploaded to the planet's central neural archive. The Yusan nation used her neural patterns to create the Elster Replika unit. Her original neural pattern was lost after the central neural archive was destroyed, but the nation would use the neural pattern of a dead Elster unit to continue producing them. It's hard to say anything definitively, since the events are deliberately obtuse and hard to understand. I believe the intent is to have an ambiguity in the timeline and how, why things play out. But I think there are two key points we should keep in mind to understand the events and motivations of Elster. 1. The love between Alina Sale and Lilith Ito is mirrored in the love between Elster and Ariane. The cosmic or eldritch horror unearthed at Sierpinski somehow has caused for the memory, space, and time to distort, such that Lilith's memories started invading Elster, and the line between Alina and Ariane started to blur. 2. In spite of the distortions of space-time and all the oddities we've observed through the effects of bioresonance and the unearthing of the stone doorway, the emotional core and the center of our story is Elster and Ariane's love for each other, and the joy they brought each other in their modest lives during all those cycles aboard the Penrose 512. With everything said and done, it's time to go home. We return home, and soon Elster will be confronting the only other person that had crossed the threshold of the stone doorway and glimpsed into infinity, the commander unit, Falk. Before the final confrontation, let's learn more about the Falk replicas. The Protector Commander, the head of each Eon facility's protector forces, is a powerful prototype bioresonant Falk unit, an authority that may never be questioned. A Falk unit serves not just as a commander to the protectors, but as a nearly godlike being, a perception that is underlined by her tall build and resemblance to our nation's leaders, the great revolutionary and her daughter. It is aided by her powerful prototype bioresonance modules, which not only allows her to bend the will of weaker minds and phantom their intentions and emotions, but also grants her the ability to manipulate objects from a distance. Back in the radio station where Ariane served and grew up, we see her books, and once again we find a book in yellow. Things end as they began. It's time to go home. It's time to go back to the Penrose with Ariane. On our final walkway, we find a poem by Commander Falk, who had been invaded by Elster's memories. We were dancing to that song they started the broadcast with. We fell asleep watching that movie we had seen so many times before. If only I could take us back to that time. Those memories are mine now. We find a note by Adler. All efforts to contain this illness have been in vain. All the Gestalt workers have succumbed to it, leaving only dark shadows on the walls and floors where they died. And soon, all of us Replika will have lost our senses and turned to writhing masses of flesh. I now believe it was not an infectious disease, nor some form of poison or radiation. It was a slow corruption of reality itself. As I've relived the same cycle over and over again, each time details change. Things are twisted, added, removed. How long until it all turns to nothing but noise? At the end of the road, we have our confrontation with Falk, who now also has Elster's memories. Falk tells us that Ariane will never dance with us again. A difficult fight with a minor god. Falk uses her bioresonant capabilities to attack us, and to defend herself by materializing stone walls. She summons other infected replicas to fight for her. She launches attacks with golden spears and space distortions like black holes. But in the end, Elster wouldn't give up, and she used every combat trick she knew to incapacitate and stab Falk with the golden spears. Elster will dance with her again. Falk was wrong. Space-time crumbles and goes black. Elster is back on the Penrose, and we learn what happened when the small scout ship reached their mission destination and Phase 3 began. At 3,000 cycles, they get the Phase 3 instructions. Congratulations, comrade. You've survived 3,000 cycles, reaching the final phase of the Penrose program. With the end of the operational lifetime of your replica unit approaching, it is time to prepare for the final phase of your mission. If you have not found a suitable world for landing by this point, accept that you will not. Find solace in the thought that others might be successful where you failed. As you are probably aware, your ship's spare parts and rations will soon be depleted. Life support systems and reactor shielding will soon begin to fail, and radiation may begin to leak from the cooling system. We recommend that you do not attempt to prolong your suffering by reusing old filters or rationing supplies. Instead, make peace with your fate. We suggest that you ask your replica, while it's still functional, to spare you a slow and agonizing death, or that you take a permanent rest in the cryogenic pod. Remember, you will have died serving your nation by partaking in a glorious demonstration of our power. The Penrose program served a different function for Ariane. She always knew the risk, but she also knew that for at least 3,000 cycles, she'd be free. Free to read, dream, dance, sing, listen to music, and unexpectedly, to love. To be free of her bioresonance being found out, and her being hunted for it. The Penrose program offered Ariane more freedom than life under the Yusan nation could ever afford her. It was aboard this modest scout ship where Ariane and Elster would finally find something they could call home and found happiness in each other's company. They didn't want or need the outside world that had been so cruel to them, making them feel like outsiders, defective, sending them to deep mines and to fight wars. Here, it was just the two of them, and they were happy with things that way. Ariane would not let this information reach Elster, as Ariane wished to spend the last of her moments alongside Elster in happiness, blissfully disregarding the statement, spending a romantic night dancing, and then subsequently falling asleep together. However, for the next cycles, Ariane would slowly wither under the effects of radiation poisoning, which had caused a variety of health issues on her. We find in a note, "I'm tired of it all. Every time I go to sleep, I wonder if I'll wake up again. I'm scared that will be the last time I say goodnight to her. Did I say it right? Will she be okay? What if one of us won't wake up tomorrow?" So how does our story end? I do not think that there's a definitive end. The story and the events are deliberately obtuse and hard to interpret. This is especially true when you factor in the supernatural elements. So in the end, the viewer or the player will have to piece together how the story ends for them. For me, this is how I believe the story ends, with Ariane and Elster together, holding hands and dancing. Treasure the love that you have in your life. The world might try to take it from you. And remember, you are valuable to somebody. Well, thank you very much for watching my video, especially sticking it out to the end. It's a real big help with the algorithm, and I appreciate it. So what do you think? How do you think Signalis ends? What did the story mean to you? I did want to take a moment to say thank you for everybody that's liked, commented, shared, or watched any of my videos. A special big thanks to the first member of my channel. I really appreciate your support, and it's helping me do what I'm doing right now. Also, just another plug for myself. If you're curious about the universe and would like to learn more about what physics tells us about it, consider checking out my astrophysics book on the Amazon Kindle marketplace. Take care of yourself. Thanks for watching. Later.